Hello, YouTube. I thought the album that we could talk about today would be Fleetwood Mac Tango in the Night, as opposed to Rumba in the Afternoon, I guess. This is an excellent album. Amazing cover artwork, by the way, by Brett Livingstone Strong. I really wish I had the 12-inch version just so I could appreciate that more fully, and it really does tell you a lot about the music inside. The artwork is very similar to the music in that it's very masterfully done, a lot of detail, a lot of color, but there's also a bit of a sheen to it, a bit of a remove. There's a fantasy and a romantic aspect to it, but it's not an impression. It's not realism. There is a bit of a distance there. Um, And Brett Livingstone Strong, who did the artwork, he's quite the character in and of himself. Kind of want to do some more research about him, but he's got some pretty strong ties to Michael Jackson. And there actually is a sort of similar vibe to this album as there is to say Thriller. This album's nowhere near as good as Thriller, um, but I wouldn't saying that I wouldn't say it. It's a piece of garbage next to it either. It lacks some of the things that Thriller has going for it, like the great riffs on like Beat It or the bass line on Billie Jean. There's nothing of that caliber on this record. But as far as the general production and the amount of detail that goes into it, and just the sound quality overall, um, yeah, a lot of similarities there. I don't know if it was an 80s thing. This obviously came out after Thriller, so maybe they were influenced by that whole scene to some extent as well. I don't know. Um, but yeah, a predominantly acceptable album. This is one that I really had no knowledge of, even though I claimed to be a Fleetwood Mac fan for for years. The Chain, obviously, amazing song. Dreams, Rumors, Tusk, all that stuff is excellent. This album, I thought, was just sort of just a lost album, just something squeezed into the back end of their career that really probably wasn't of any real significance. That is just ignorance on my part. Apparently, this is their second best-selling album after Rumors, and it had a ton of successful singles as well. So I guess I was just out of the loop on that one. And it is a really, really solid album. I don't think there's a weak song on here. That said, nothing on here really elevates itself above the rest of the packs. You've got a really consistent album. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's those extreme summits that are reached on any of these songs as there was on their other albums. I don't know if I'm really going to go track by track on this one just because there isn't a whole lot in the broad strokes anyways to differentiate these songs. They're all, have a solid chorus. They're well put together. There's interesting arrangements, all sorts of instrumental details that are worth giving any song on here multiple listens. The more you listen to it, the more you notice. Like an example of that, the second track, Seven Wonders, has a really cool hook in there, which almost has a couple hooks within a hook. There's sort of like a little arpeggiated guitar line, but then behind that, there's this sort of pitch-shifted synthesizer, I think. There's something kind of whooshing underneath it. And then there's a couple of little drum touches as well in there that kind of are buried within that hook as well. So there's a lot going on within that. It's certainly not a two-dimensional album in any respect. There's layer after layer after layer to this stuff, which is a testament to Lindsey Buckingham, who really orchestrated this whole thing, did the production. He was intending on doing a solo album, but kind of got roped into doing a full band one, and I think the bulk of the work was left to him. He had to kind of piece it together from what the other members were willing to contribute, which in some cases wasn't a whole lot, but I think he did an amazing job of getting some good work out of them. Stevie Nicks apparently was in really rough shape. just out of rehab or maybe going into it throughout this process. And her vocals suffered because of that. So he had to piece those together using a Fairlight synthesizer, I believe is how he did that. But it is really cool because she does make appearances in these different songs, and her voice does really give it that Fleetwood Mac stamp of authenticity. She's got the most unique voice of any of the singers in the band, I'd say. So you definitely want to have her in there. She does add her personality to things, although it is at her a bit of a remove, at a bit of a distance. Christine McVie, she contributes some great songs on here. Everywhere, that was a successful single. Little Lies, that was probably the biggest hit off of this album, and it does kind of stand out when that track comes on. If anything on here stands out above the rest, I'd say that one does. It just has a flow to it that just works naturally. Part of that might be just I'm more accustomed to it because I've heard it on the radio quite a bit. Welcome to the Room, Sarah. That's a really cool track. That's going into Stevie Nicks singing about her time in rehab. It also seems to have some sort of parallel Gone with the Wind references worked in there. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but excellent song. The song Tango in the Night itself, that's a cool track. It seems like they're kind of trying to shoehorn a bunch of different ideas into one song, but for the most part, they make it work, and it's got a cool, heavy guitar riff in it as well, which is, I guess, unique to this album. So yeah, a lot of inventiveness. You can see all the thought and work that especially Lindsey Buckingham had been putting in over the years really pays off on this, because you get the feeling that to an extent the band is just barely holding it together. They're kind of going on fumes, but they're able to scrape together enough good ideas and just work them through, put in the time to make a really solid, really consistent album. Probably the biggest disappointment is that John McVie doesn't have a whole lot going on in this record. Apparently he was into doing his sailing and stuff around this time, which, I can't blame him. He worked hard his whole life. He's probably wants to do some different things rather than deal with all the insane drama that was going on with this band. But it's hard to pick out a real memorable bass line on here. It's serviceable, but certainly nothing like The Chain. I think if he would have been up to his, or Dreams, excellent bass line there too. If he was up to that kind of standard, I think it would have really elevated this album into the stratosphere, because it does have a sort of clinical synthesizer, programmed drum sort of a feel in general to the album. Not in a bad way, probably in the best way that an album can have that. Like I say, kind of a danceable, Michael Jackson Thriller kind of a vibe, but without the great bass lines that are on Thriller. So if he could have mixed that in, it probably would have given a little bit more life and warmth to the entire proceedings. But still, at the end of the day, great album. Glad I stumbled upon it. I had really no interest in this portion of Fleetwood Mac's career. I figured if there was anything worth seeing there, it probably would have come to my attention already, but that's probably just me living under a rock and not a testament to the actual quality of what they're putting out here. So if you haven't checked it out already, by all means, look into Fleetwood Mac, Tango in the Night.